And thank you for continuing with BSB41507. I am Trudy Robinson. This presentation forms part of time management techniques. In particular, the inputs, outputs and responsibilities relating to the management of the project schedule or timeline. This subject is covered in Chapter 6 of PMBOK 4, starting on page 129. A timeline sequence usually follows the process of the definition and clear identification of all tasks and activities. This can be undertaken in a work breakdown structure. We would also need to clearly identify all the stakeholders, including the resources, being the individuals, organisations or teams that would be involved in completing the work or the activities that have been identified. Of course, the durations of all the activities and tasks would also need to be included. The resources would then be applied to the tasks, and then the relationships between the tasks, including successor, predecessor relationships, milestones, constraints and deadlines, etc., which will be covered in further presentations. Once these are undertaken, an initial project schedule will be complete. Of course, we have covered the definition of activities and tasks, the identification of stakeholders and resources, and the application of those to the tasks. These have already been included in the work breakdown structure template. Once the initial project schedule is complete, this contributes to the finalisation of budget plans, procurements, the resource allocation plan, quality management, project management. Quite often these documents or these tools will already be created, and it may be that one creates more input to the other and vice versa. This happens in the real world. The first cut of any tool that's being created for a project will need to be updated. And of course, the project schedule will contribute to the ongoing communication, both outward from the project, and the schedule will be updated as a result of incoming reports. One thing we need to point out is that a timeline or a Gantt chart is not a one-off thing that is done at the beginning of a project to gain approval for the project. If you're going to spend the time on creating the schedule, ensure you use it as a tool to assist in the maintenance of the project and ensure that the project will be delivered in full on time. A timeline is also not piecemeal. If you're going to use a timeline, don't just update some tasks to tell a good news story. Be clear. Tell the full story. Ensure that stakeholders are aware of how you manage your timeline and when to expect updates. In order to be able to maintain an ongoing project schedule, there are many inputs, and of course it starts with the initial project schedule. From this, you'll have a risk management plan and an issue register. Any things that are raised in these may generate new tasks, reallocate resources, extend timelines, etc., and this will contribute to an update or changes to the schedule or timeline. Regular reports from all the stakeholders, from the resources allocated to the tasks, and from any other environment may also change timelines, tasks, etc. The identification of any changes to out-of-scope items, contract variations, etc. will also change the schedule or add new tasks or vary tasks. And of course, the general identification of new tasks during the course of a project or changes or updates to resources, etc. should all be updated on an ongoing basis. And of course, stakeholders themselves can identify or request new work to be done or changes to be made for the project. All these requirements should be included transparently in an ongoing update and changes to the schedule or timeline. We need to point out that keeping the project schedule up to date is a time-consuming exercise, and it does require a specific skill. If your project is complex and ongoing for a period of time, you must ensure that the resources who have the skills and the time are identified at the beginning of the project plan, and ensure that the budget is set aside to pay for them. This requirement is commonly under-resourced, and the project manager is expected to be the project administrator as well. Ensure you receive and have access to project administration support as you require. The key element is to ensure that the project timeline is available and up to date to you all the time. If you cannot control your schedule, you cannot control your project. It is a key tool for measurement, and if you do not measure it, you cannot manage it. It may be that your project schedule is updated daily or weekly. Once you undertake an update, it may contribute to the management of budgets, procurement management, resource allocation, contract management, and ongoing communications. And of course, it will ensure that you have to go through a re-evaluation of scope, your risk management, your issue register, your ongoing priorities, critical success path, and task and resource conflict. So your schedule or timeline, which is used interactively or as a same term, contributes to a great deal of the ongoing management of the project. Your timeline is made up of tasks, their durations and the resources applied to them, and of course task sequence and relationships. These will be covered in a separate presentation. A timeline is not a once-in-a-project objective to get scope approval. When you establish a timeline, ensure it's done with intent and with purpose. And manage it. Ensure you have the resources available to ensure that the timeline will be managed and kept up to date on an ongoing basis.